Time to get connected and stay connected. Welcome to another edition of CMS Connected. Hi, everybody. I'm Butch Stearns, and this is the web content management industry's only news commentary show, the award-winning CMS Connected, and the award-winning co-host alongside of me, Scott Lewer. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Butch. How are you? Awards? What awards are we getting?
I don't know what awards we've won, but I do know we're going global today. I do know we are going to talk about globalized content and how content management systems today are handling multilingual and multi-regional content delivery. This is something you're excited about.
It is. Sounds like an award-winning show to me. No, it is exciting. I think we got a lot of good things to talk about today. Globalization being one of them. It's certainly on the minds of many. I remember for years we were having to force people to think about this, and now as analysts we're being asked about it all the time as folks are trying to figure out how to make their content relevant to every part of their audience.
Brief introduction for you, for people who may be tuning into the show for the first time. I don't know who you are. You're the principal analyst at Digital Clarity Group. Talk about what you're proud about.
Sure. So basically I'm an industry analyst, right? So we help both vendors figure out how to position their products most appropriately for the buy-side audience of folks and help them understand, how to make meaningful software for them. And we work with buy-side, buyers and who are looking to find technologies and service providers to be able to help them, enable their digital strategies, essentially.
Scott Lewer from Digital Clarity Group. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. You are watching CMS Connected. Quick tease for what's coming up in the show. We're going to be joined in just a little bit by Seth Gottlieb, the Global Marketing Operations Manager, Chief Marketing Technologist at Linebridge. We're also going to be joined by Jeff Eaton from... Jeff is from Lulabot, and Jeff will be joining us about one of the news stories we're talking about. We'll be reviewing Marqui CMS for our Spotlight segment, and at the end of the show, our ever-popular Rapid Fire segment, where we put Scott on the clock. But first, before we begin, let's acknowledge our CMS Connected lead sponsors who make this all happen. First of all, Falcon Software. The people at Falcon Software can provide you with expert advice and integration solutions for all your creative web design, web content management, e-commerce, social, and or mobile needs. Check out the people at Falcon Software. And Digital Clarity Group, DCG, a research and advisory firm focused on navigating organizations through the digital transformation process. And I would also like to do a quick recommendation for all of you watching right now, right down below us, the white paper on understanding the ROI of marketing automation. It's located at the bottom of your screen, which happens to also be the main topic of November's show that we'll talk about a little bit later on. So let's get right into this show and start with our 4 top news stories of the day. You ready, Scott?
I am.
All right, your commentary on this. First one, Oracle buys Compendium. An October 17th announcement that Oracle acquires cloud-based content marketing provider Compendium. It only adds to Oracle's already comprehensive customer experience solution. As customers increasingly access information through online and mobile channels, the buying process is shifting from sales-driven to marketing-driven. Now more than ever, marketers are challenged to deliver relevant and engaging content across multiple channels and throughout the customer life cycle. That was Thomas Curlin, Executive Vice President of Oracle Development. Talk about the significance of this.
Sure. I actually think this is fairly significant because it's the first of what I predict will be a number of acquisitions in this space. So I think the only thing here is that it's kind of too bad that Oracle was the acquirer, because we just have seen really great technologies go to Oracle and kind of not die, but they get exposed to their existing client base, but they don't do a whole lot to go push them out into the market.
So you're challenging Oracle on this a little bit?
I mean, is that a challenge?
Throw it out there, Scott.
Maybe I am. Yeah, I'd love to see you do something innovative with Compendium and make it better than it is today, and make your overall stack better than it is today. I mean, I think they bought FatWire. We haven't seen much happen with the FatWire web content management technology. They bought it back in 2010. They bought Eloqua, which was one of the it was certainly best of breed information. It was in the commerce space, especially helping to make sure that a website captivate and understand who the audience is based on the behavior on the site to be able to kind of target content to them, that sort of stuff. Now Compendium. So they've got a lot of tools in their stack, ATG, a number of them that they, I don't know that they've pulled these together extremely well yet, or kind of had the sum of the parts be greater than the whole, or whatever that is. Yeah.
Well, how about one final comment on this? I mean, the whole goal of this is to drive sales leads. This whole shift of sales-driven to marketing-driven. Let me give you another comment from Thomas Kurian, the Executive VP of Oracle. By adding Compendium's content marketing platform to Oracle Eloqua Marketing Cloud, customers will be able to capture more prospects, improve the customer experience, and drive top-line revenue.
Yep. And I mean, look, Compendium is great. As a tool, it is a content marketing tool. It's a cloud-based content marketing tool that essentially is going to do just that. Content marketing is all about making content, creating content, driving content to make sure that it's extremely relevant for your audience. So a big aspect of that is knowing who is in your audience to be able to understand what content to provide them. So the combination of Compendium's idea of having an editorial calendar and surfacing content that's going to be relevant and instructive and provide some subject matter expertise, combine that with Eloqua's capability of understanding who's in the audience, making good sense of, based on their behavioral information stuff. The power of those two things in ideal circumstances is certainly, I think, a nice vision to have. Let's see if they do that. But I think, as I said in the very beginning, I think this is the first of probably many of these smaller, innovative, kind of disruptive tools that are out there in the content marketing space, specifically being swallowed up by web content management or other larger vendors like this who are looking to add to their capabilities.
Well, and you just said it, and this is one of the latest stories where we're talking about persona-based content and all of that. It's all about defining your persona, trying to reach them in unique and ways that you're going to get value out of.
Understanding your audience, understanding where they are in their journey, and being able to provide content that's meaningful and relevant to them at each stage. Yeah.
All right, our second headline, we talk about startups, we talk about big data startups, and one of the things common with all startups is money. They need money to start up, and they're looking for it to get it in different ways. Well, this is interesting. Big data means big money, and with an eye on big profits, a group of venture capital firms have come together in California's Silicon Valley to create a new big data investment fund that will not only pump money into startups, but also invest in big data research. While there are technology venture funds all over the planet, Data Elite claims to be the only one that is specifically for big data.
Yeah.
Again, you're skeptical.
No, I'm not skeptical, and I don't know the VC landscape of who all is in whose portfolios. But what I do know is we certainly hear an awful lot about big data. There's certainly a lot of investment in big data generally, from the standpoint of certainly large firms are buying up and adding the capabilities to their suite. First, folks are trying to define what the heck big data is, how to make it actionable, how to all those sorts of things. Alan Bondi from my team just wrote a report called about small data, basically that last mile of big data. How do you make it actionable, relevant, social, all those things. So there's a lot of talk about it, and there's a lot of hype about it, and certainly you see a lot of investment from the larger companies in it. I guess they're talking about the very specifics, that there aren't many VC funds out there specifically that are just composed solely of big data startups. So,
sure. How about this? Tell me if I'm wrong on this. If I'm looking at, a group of VC people that got together in Silicon Valley, and they created this fund specifically geared towards big data.
Yep.
Among other things, that tells us that a lot of money goes towards big data. A lot of budgets go towards big data, because if they've created a fund specifically targeted to that, they think they can create value with this.
And these are not dumb guys. I mean, the folks who are backing this is the Horowitzes of the world. I mean, these are Andreessen. All these big funds are like putting their money into this startup, and they're actually, it's a really innovative idea that they've done. They're requiring all of these, I think they're taking in 10 companies into the fund out of the gate. They're giving them $150,000. They say they've already defined that it's going to be for 6 of their value, which I don't completely understand. How are you doing a general valuation like that? But that's because it's beyond my expertise. This is not a financial show. So anyway, but they're giving them startup money. They're having them spend like 6 months on site with them. So they want them like in their incubation center actually working. And they're exposing to them the minds and power of the folks at Facebook and the folks at a number of these really large organizations to ensure that they get the insights, access to data, all sorts of great information. I mean, it's a really ideal startup situation. So they're putting a lot behind it.
News story number 3, we talk about the Magic Quadrant. While I peruse the baseball free agent list, Scott's like a kid on Christmas morning talking about the Magic Quadrant. The Gartner 2013 ECM Magic Quadrant, and we're talking winners and losers, Scott. This year's Gartner ECM Magic Quadrant sees some players rise, some fall, while they're all fighting to survive.
Yeah.
So Gartner evaluated 23 vendors in the most recent version of their annual Magic Quadrant for enterprise content management. Comparing this year's report with last year's version, what are a few things to you that stand out?
Sure. So I guess just, I don't know that we need to set up what the Gartner Quadrant is anymore. We've done that on a number of shows, but basically it's a 2x2 way of Gartner, the way that they evaluate players in a particular portion of the industry. And they evaluate them, and basically furthest up and to the right is going to be good. So the leaders are up and to the right. So the ones that we should talk about there is Oracle fell out of the leadership position, and I've not necessarily seen this happen ever, frankly, in the Gartner Quadrant in the ECM space. Kind of once you're there unless you drop out of the picture altogether. So Oracle did drop out. I think it's very curious because here we go. By the way, we're talking about Oracle and where small companies go to die. In this case, they're not, for some reason, and this is beyond me, I'm sure there's a very specific reason and answer, but they've not participated, Butch, in any of the recent waves, and they did not participate actively in this quadrant either. So they're being rated and evaluated by them because it would be remiss of Gartner to not say where they think they stand.
Why aren't they participating?
I don't know. They're not actively participating. So they haven't told me that. I guess I haven't asked the question recently, but they have been noticeably. If you look the way that the Forrester Wave addresses it, they kind of show them in a shaded version. That means that they didn't actively participate, but they rated their product. Same sort of a thing. So that's been the case for all of the past on a number of waves and a number of quadrants. That's what Oracle's been doing lately. So I'm not exactly sure why, to be honest. I don't know why. But either way, it seems to have affected them here because they slid out of the leadership position, and that was the first time.
So my portion of tying up this news story, Robinson Cano will end up with the Dodgers. Jacoby Ellsbury will end up with the Yankees.
How about those Red Sox?
How about those Red
Anything
Sox,
happened
huh?
in Boston here recently?
Almost
In the
as big
baseball world?
news as the Red Sox parade in Boston.
Yes.
Is something we touched on in the last CMS Connected.
What would that be?
Drupal is forking.
It is a big.
We need to make sense of this, Scott.
We need to have a parade. Or not.
Have a parade for Drupal. I think they do have a parade
There
when
probably
Drupal's
are
forking, right?
a parade of geeks. That's the term of endearment, by the way. But yes,
To
a
make
parade
sense of all of this with Drupal forking, we bring in an expert. He is Jeff Eaton, digital strategist at Lulabot. Jeff, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Great to be on the show.
Thanks for being with us. So Drupal is forking. Is this a big deal?
It depends on how you look at it. Drupal it's open source software. It's distributed under the GPL license, so there's no legal barrier to prevent someone from just picking up the code and going and starting their own parallel project using the same code. And that's what several longtime members of the Drupal community have done. They've a new CMS called Backdrop that right now is basically just the same as Drupal. But they want to avoid a lot of the sweeping changes that are coming as part of Drupal's upcoming 8.0 release and sort of go in their own direction, continuing to evolve the features, but keeping it more familiar for a lot of the developers who've invested lots of time over the past learning sort of Drupal's idiosyncrasies.
Hey, Jeff, this is Scott. So good to see you. So tell me just really quickly, for those who are not either familiar with Drupal or familiar specifically with even kind of the notion of what forking is, can you tell us just first about what the forking process is exactly?
Yeah, it's definitely unique to the open source world. When you're building a project and anyone can use and distribute source code for it and go build their own version of it. Technically, there's nothing to prevent someone from just saying, you know what, I want to make a CMS called Schmoople, let's say. It's terrible branding,
That's
but
great.
there's nothing to stop me from doing that. Inside of the open source world, in the GPL licensing community, that's called like Freedom Zero. And for corporations, the idea is if you build your system, there's no vendor lock-in. The advantage is if the vendor that you worked with goes under, or if the project goes in a different direction that doesn't serve your needs, you can continue to develop it, and there's no legal encumbrance for you. But the flip side of that too is that other people in the development community who are contributing code to the Drupal project can also decide to go in their own direction too. And I think one of the reasons why it's noteworthy is there's never really been a major fork of Drupal in the past. There's been people who sort of did little side projects that ended up getting reintegrated in the main project eventually. But we've never had a situation where someone said, you know what, I just want to go in a different direction. But at the same time, Drupal's been around for 13 years. It's this kind of stuff happens with open source, and it's technically one of the advantages of this licensing model. Instead of there being, deep internal conflicts over the direction of the project, it's sort of a release valve.
So it seems to me, Scott, I mean, he mentioned Drupal's been around for 13 years.
Yeah.
Anything that happens with Drupal is a big deal. I mean, people are evangelical.
Yep.
When it comes to Drupal, aren't they?
It's true. I think that it really is true. I mean, and evangelical, they talk about open source as a religion. It's very true, and folks tend to be very flag touting, right? So when they latch on to one of the CMSs, specifically one of the open source CMSs, they tend to really be active, relatively active in the community. There are obviously there's a fewer number of them who are extremely active, but they take it very much to heart. And so Drupal is the second largest open source CMS project that's out there, WordPress being the first one. And so, it does tend to be a big deal. They have a really huge community, a really big following, and I think it's something like, 5% or something like that of the sites on the web are on the project. So it's certainly, now this fork doesn't necessarily affect any of that, though, any of those past ones. But it is a kind of moving forward, we'll see the community potentially split. And I wanted to ask that to Jeff.
Jeff's back with us. By the way, if you're just watching and joining us, we're on CMS-Connected. I'm Butch Stearns. He's Scott Lewer. We're talking about Drupal forking. And joining us is Jeff Eaton, digital strategist at Lulabot. He's not only a digital strategist at Lulabot, but Jeff has designed and implemented large-scale web platforms for people like Sony, Fast Company, Harvard University, the WWE, Verizon Wireless. He's also the host of the Insert Content Here Content Strategy podcast. He's an author of the first edition O'Reilly's Media's Using Drupal and a frequent participant in the core Drupal project. So we have one of the experts with Drupal with Jeff.
And I wanted Jeff on here specifically. I've known Jeff for a few years, and he's definitely, I believe, kind of knows the pulse of the Drupal community. He's really highly viewed by the Drupal community. Always some of the most popular presentations. So Jeff, when I go to backdropcms.org, which is the URL for the new fork, it says right on there, the first thing that you see is it says, "Don't panic." Is there a level of panic in the community about this? Kind of what's the sense of the community on the whole thing right now?
I don't think there's a lot of panic right now about Backdrop, but when it was first announced, there was definitely a strong emotional reaction. There's always been a strong community value around not forking Drupal, around contributing back improvements that you make to help make the project, better for everyone. And that's served the community really well, and it's served the product really well. But also, as Drupal has served a larger and larger list of different kinds of audiences, there's inherent tension in that gets difficult. There's only so many different kinds of customers that you can satisfy with one particular code base. And I think there's a lot of tension around the upcoming Drupal 8 release because there's a lot of different, a lot of code that's been refactored. I think it's something like, 80% of the APIs in Drupal have changed. And I think that makes sense. There's a lot of old framework code that's been there for, probably 5, 6 years. we've really reached sort of the local maximum in terms of how much utility we get out of it and how useful it is. And people outside of the Drupal community who haven't invested that huge amount of time in getting up to speed on Drupal's idiosyncrasies can find it very difficult. So Drupal 8, a lot of work has been put into sort of adopting more outside standards in terms of coding practices and other frameworks. People from outside of the community tend to find it a little easier to sort of get acclimated to the code base. But people who've invested a huge amount of time in learning how Drupal works and making, sing and dance and do whatever they want to, there's a lot of adjustment that comes with that. And I think there's been a lot of tension around that for a while, and also a lot of tension around how these decisions get made. The decision-making process in the Drupal community tends to be very organic. And that's one of the things that I think Acquia has struggled with, how to embrace that organic decision-making process that powers a lot of the Drupal development world, while still pushing forward with enterprise features that bring a lot of value to the large organizations that are beginning to adopt Drupal.
And I would think that this would be fairly good news for them, no? I mean, certainly when when I'm evaluating Drupal, or when I have customers who are looking at Acquia as a specific example, it's usually it's all on the enterprise size. And Acquia for a long time has been really trying to kind of move the community forward to gear it more and more, the product more and more towards kind of enterprise use cases. I would imagine as the code itself matures and becomes more object-oriented and that sort of thing, this is the Drupal 8 code now I'm talking about, I would imagine it would be a good thing for a company like Acquia who's had a tough time, like you say, navigating the kind of community to get them to want to be behind this shift. Are we now essentially, potentially, is there now a split in the community where you take those who are kind of more enterprise-minded and they stick with the Drupal 8, and those who are maybe not as enterprise-minded? Is that appropriate? I don't know if I'm being clear.
I think that the team that's working on the Backdrop CMS, I think they're thinking along those lines. Whether or not there's going to be some sort of deep split, I think is still, that's an outstanding question. We'll have to see how the Backdrop CMS matures and how it plays out. But at least in theory, I think that was the safety valve, analogy that I was talking about. It's another side project where people who really don't want to prioritize enterprise functionality and enterprise-friendly features theoretically can pursue the Backdrop project and work on that.
Okay, and last question for you from me. We're talking about this as if there's, a split tends to mean, when you go to a fork in the road, it means you pick one way or the other. This is not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, there are probably plenty of clients who may elect, or companies who may elect to develop on one or the other or both as is appropriate. Do we just now have more choices?
I'd say, yeah, it's a matter of more choice. And again, Drupal 8 hasn't shipped yet. Backdrop isn't actually ready for prime time yet. So, in a lot of ways, we're sort of, talking about the Super Bowl 2 months before it happens. It doesn't have to be cataclysmic, but also it's a decision off in the future. I think it's something interesting to keep an eye on, but nobody needs to panic.
Got it. Makes sense.
Jeff Eaton, digital strategist at Lulabot. You can listen to his podcast. You can read his book. Jeff, how do you prefer that people get a hold of you and find out about more from you?
I'm Eaton on Twitter, and that's usually the easiest way to get a hold of me.
All right, Jeff, thanks for your time on CMS Connected today.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Time now to dig deeper into the focus of today's show, and that, as we said off the top, is content globalization. What is content globalization? Web content globalization is a strategic initiative to localize your content, ensuring not only that your content is accurately translated from your source files, but that all the content, including graphics, forms, and materials, is locally accurate as well. This is a multifaceted effort that includes globalization, localization, and internationalization. And here to talk about those facets, we're going to bring in an expert. He is Seth Gottlieb. He is the Chief Marketing Technologist for LineBridge. This is a subject that has many levels. We're going to dive much deeper into this. Again, when we're talking about the globalized content and how content management systems today are handling multilingual and multi-regional content delivery, we need an expert to talk about this, Scott, and we're bringing in Seth Gottlieb, frequent contributor to the show. Hello, Seth.
Hello.
He magically appeared. See that?
How did I do that?
And there we are. So how you doing?
Very good. Very good. Still
let's
riding the high from the baseball game.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's dive right into this. What are the differences between globalization, localization, and internationalization?
Sure. I'm glad you started with that because those are three terms that are often thrown around kind of interchangeably, but they mean very different things. So internationalization is a process of taking software and making it capable of supporting multiple languages in different locales at once. So, and a lot of content management platforms have this capability, but it really depends on the customer to be able to enable that. Localization is actually the translation of content into the different locales, the different languages. So this is into different languages themselves, and also supporting different cultures and things that are relevant to that community. And globalization is kind of a combination of the two. It's internationalization on your platform and also localizing your content. But you'll also hear globalization talked about as an economic term, which is just like the expanding of markets
Right.
across the different geographies.
So when it comes to my website and my content, how does somebody start off globalizing
Sure.
their website? Where do
sure.
you begin?
Well, it's
Don't.
no,
Hell
yeah,
with it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't even start.
Well, to tell you the truth, it's a daunting task because most customers, most companies are having a hard enough time managing their website in one language. They're
Right.
not doing as good a job as they like to. And then when you multiply that effort across all the different languages, all the different markets you want to support, it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And then if you get into things like personalization and all this advanced functionality, you're basically doing that across all the markets as well. So it's a big thing to start out with, and I think a lot of companies fail where they just get halfway into it and then they stop, and then they leave behind these what I call these localized time capsules of like this kind of site that gets neglected after that time.
So I've been in a lot of. I'm sorry. Did you?
So I was just going to say that the way to do it is to develop a strategy, and what we recommend is this three-tiered approach, where you divide your markets into three tiers. Your top tier is your home market, and that is your home market plus any other markets where you're getting a majority of your revenue from. So if you're already dealing with multiple markets, that's kind of your tier one, and all of those markets demand kind of first class attention when it comes to localizing. I mean, it might be that you're generating unique content for that market. Your tier two is your fastest growing market. So these will be your future tier ones, but right now they're just at a point where if you invest an adequate amount of money, you can ride that wave of market growth. And then tier three is kind of everybody else every other market you want to be involved in. So the tier one's easy. You need to support those markets.
Sure.
Tier one is kind of modulating that spend and effort so that you're spending appropriately, so you take advantage of that growth. And tier three is about managing kind of that minimum level of quality so that you're not embarrassing yourself in the kind of the markets where you just want to be somewhat present in.
Talk if you can, because you made the point, but I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about it. How much is this not just translation of content? Because there is the whole, right, we're dealing with cultural things and it's even colors and all, like tell us about the kind of non-obvious, non-translational part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an experience. Mm-hmm. Like when we talk about web content management, we talk about web experience management, mm-hmm. and this is an experience, and it's not just the words on the page, but it's also the brand values and all that. So, a lot of companies will find that their color palette means a different thing to those markets, and that celebrate, that have different cultures.
Sure.
Orange is a good color because no one finds orange offensive.
See?
So just
See?
Everything orange. You heard it here.
That's why we picked one. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
So, go ahead.
So everything that you see, whether you're aware of it or not, has an imprint of a culture. And if you put like the ethnicity of the people on your website, I mean, these are all cues that might be interpreted in different ways by different audiences.
Sure. And so this is not just the act of translating content from XYZ language to these other
Exactly.
ones. It's really about kind of looking at it holistically from the perspective of somebody in an audience in another culture that potentially speaks another language, or maybe even not necessarily.
I mean, I would think about it as an extension of just all the web experience management you've been thinking about, and it almost seems kind of ridiculous that you think about kind of multivariate testing. You like this picture, that picture, but like, do you use this text that the customer's not going to understand, or this customer? I mean, it's like, it seems kind of silly to get into all that if you're a global company and not get into localization.
Absolutely.
You are watching CMS Connected. Seth Gottlieb is joining us. Scott Lewer from Digital Clarity Group is here as always, co-host of CMS Connected. I'm Butch Stearns. Seth is the Chief Marketing Technologist for Linebridge. We're talking about the focus of today's show, content globalization. So you've painted this almost overwhelming picture of going global with your content. But when I think of the website too, I've been in a lot of e-commerce discussions lately. Let's talk about operations. Because if you grow your website and it's global, you're going to want people to buy on your website. So you got all of the stuff that goes along with that, right? You've got payment, you've got delivery, you've got supply chain, you've got support. I mean, does this get, now what?
Yeah. Well, we like to think of it in terms of the global customer lifecycle. So that what we're talking about in the beginning, the first part of it is seeking. This is getting visibility for your website, getting it noticed, your SEO and all that. And then the next level is engaging. There's a graphic right there. The next level is engaging. That's where the customer is on your website and you're trying to optimize the experience so they feel comfortable with your brand and get to know it and kind of can reach those next level of conversions. Then is that transaction aspect. Can you actually deliver your product to this person? And will the transaction go cleanly? Is it e-commerce experience? Does your payment form accept no postal code, because postal code is not everywhere. So all those little details. If you require a salesperson, does a salesperson have the ability to communicate with a buyer who speaks a different language? And then we get into the experience with your product. Is the product localized itself? If it's a software product, is all the help and the labeling, does that work in those different languages? If it's a physical product, does the manual exist in those languages? And then at the end is the support. If someone has a problem, how do they resolve that problem? And those last two pieces are probably the most important pieces, especially with social media, because if you have an unsatisfactory experience and you start posting these things on the social networks, the things that your customers say will be more genuine and kind of more amplified than anything that you can say as a marketing organization.
We've got roles that are created for people within organizations and with agencies now that are all about just customer experience. The last thing you're talking about, and that can't be a throwaway at the end of it. It has to be vital to what you're doing and building the whole thing when it comes to globalization.
So if anything, you should think backwards, from the support and then back into, like, once you're prepared to really support that market, then you drive those customers there and you can build business.
Scott, before your question, I want to put both of you guys on the spot. Is there anybody that comes to mind that when it comes to globalization, that's either a foreign country that's doing it well in the United States or somebody that you respect that's doing it well overseas? I know that's a general question, but is there somebody that comes to mind?
I know from a web presence standpoint, 3M has always been pretty well renowned for having a good global presence, which is interesting because I know from having worked with them directly that they actually struggle in a number of the processes, but in terms of being recognized from the outside, it looks seamless to others, right? So they have this great kind of page that you come on, especially if you're coming from another country, that you get to kind of choose your experience, what's most appropriate for you, that sort of stuff, and the whole thing is tailored accordingly. That's one that comes to mind for me.
I was just thinking kind of the poster child is Coca-Cola. Not only do they kind of went global, but they are defining a product category in a lot of these countries that they're getting into, and this has been going on for decades. To think about, first of all, they had to establish the taste for Coca-Cola in the U.S., and then they had to do that in all those other countries, and the formulas are different, and their brand is
They might be, if you think about it, over the years, and I'm thinking of all the foreign ads I've seen with Coke and this and that, they might be the best brand that's really taken their brand and not changed the messaging or not done anything and done it online and done it in a content globalization way, they might be the brand to look at to
Yeah, it's
do it,
interesting
right?
because what they've done, I mean, from a consumer perspective, is rather than just kind of, well, it's kind of a combination. Once they've said this is a very American thing and kind of American diplomacy, but also they brought back this kind of multicultural aspect into their United States marketing campaigns, that this is the world's drink, and you have a lot of advertising around like, Coca-Cola, everybody drinks Coca-Cola.
Right, sure.
It's a worldwide brand.
Is this, I hope that this is, in fact, kind of my anecdotal evidence says that it's more and more popular. More and more brands are kind of undertaking this aspect. They've kind of whipped the management of, well, they haven't, but let's say for now, for argument's sake, they have whipped the management of content. Are more and more of them undertaking this? I mean, I was just in Europe and in Asia before that, and I just had this feeling that, boy, thank goodness I speak English, natively, because I could get around. I could every restaurant menu was also in English for me, and this was in Korea and in Sweden, and I was able to kind of get around completely. But it's not like that for all cultures. I hope that we're starting to make this easier for everybody. Is that the case, or?
Personally, it feels a little bit like mobile, where it feels like it's been almost around the corner forever, and then like bam, it's hitting you. That all of a sudden, and I think there have been a number of economic factors that have gone into that. One is the recession that happened in the United States. You got if your home economy is shrinking, well, how do you grow? And the obvious answer is, well, you have to expand your market. There's also the fact that there was kind of acquisition of other companies where you have big multinational companies that are trying to serve these different markets. So, I mean, part of it's where I work. I mean, I mainly work with a lot of customers that are saying, oh, we have to go global now. And I guess you could think of not just global overseas, but with the first election of President Obama, or maybe it's the second one, where they all of a sudden realized that the Latin American population is big and it's important and it's influential, and like, what are we doing for them? So I think that is another factor. So we're seeing a lot of customers that are like, we got to get this done now. And the disappointing thing is a lot of decisions they've made in the past, these customers, are affecting their ability to get into new markets.
Couple final things. Video marketing. How do I go about preparing a video for global audiences?
That's an area. Yeah, exactly.
I'm big in China.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Well, that's kind of a big question a lot of customers are asking, because they've found the effectiveness of video in all sorts of uses. It's an incredibly powerful communication tool, and then they go to their international sites and they're like hollow. They look like they've been eviscerated because all the video's pulled out. So we
just do the voiceover thing. That works so well. They're like, right now.
Well, we actually we've got a screenshot. We started this service called Rapid Video Translation about 6 months ago. This is the website where you can upload a video and purchase a translation. But there's 3 levels. Well, there's actually a lot of levels, but you can think of 3 high levels. One is subtitles. So getting back to your tiers, maybe tier 3, you do subtitling for the things that you need to push out there, maybe non-marketing type stuff, like instructional videos. And then the next level would be kind of text-to-speech voiceover. So it sounds like your GPS talking to you in a different language. And then kind of in your tier 1 markets with your really high-value marketing collateral, that's where you hire voice actors to do the work. Or you maybe do original videos for that market too.
2 final quick things. SEO and SEM. Needs, challenges with that, because people aren't going to click on ads they don't understand or they don't attract them to.
So SEO is an art in your native language, like kind of getting into the head of the people who are searching, and then you need to think about getting into the head of all those other markets, and it's not straight translation of keywords into those other languages, because it's kind of a cultural background of like how you might conceive of what to search for, what words to type in. And then of course you need to have great engaging experience on the other end of the search result to make sure that you're doing something with that that click-through.
And a final point, you started off the top talking about how overwhelming it is and laughed at me when I said, where do you begin? But what about once you get into it? Again, before you get into it, what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the pain points you should be thinking about to avoid?
Sure, so there's two pitfalls. One is scoping out internationalization when you launch your website. If you kind of say, we ran out of money or ran out of time, we're only going to do one language website. That will cause you to cut a whole bunch of corners that will be hard to resolve later on. You might have to rebuild your whole website from scratch if you've cut enough corners, especially if you want another agency to go do the work. So that's the first thing. So if you're relaunching a website, launch with 2 languages just to prove that you can do it.
Yep.
And the second thing is treating it like a project, where you say, I'm going to localize this website. It's going to be great. We're going to do Chinese, and then forgetting about it, because that websites decay at an crazily high rate. You get you're a couple of redesigns behind. You've got broken links, and what you got is this really pathetic representation of your brand that doesn't do your brand any justice.
Seth Gottlieb is here. Don't go anywhere. We got you coming up on our vendor spotlight in just a second. We're going to take a quick break now on CMS Connected, and when we come back, we will have our vendor spotlight segment in the spotlight as Seth takes us in talking about Marqui CMS, and then a little bit later on, Scott Lewer. We put Scott on the clock in rapid fire. You are watching CMS Connected, the web content management industry's only news commentary show.
I'm really excited about 8.5 and to see some of the new functionality that's coming out.
The customer experience is what actually becomes what sets other companies apart.
We want to use it in any browser. It's a big deal for us.
I want to get my hands on it, play with it, and see how it's like.
You only have one chance to have a first impression, so it better be a good one.
Time is money. You get it right there, right now.
As we talk about the proliferation of devices, it's really important that a user has a consistent experience.
The explosion of touch points, that's creating a whole new way to create customer experiences.
Our copywriters and everyone can all collaborate, contribute together.
General ease of use. I think it's going to be really great for the marketers.
Those companies that are responsive and available to deliver those solutions in the ways that customers are looking for them will surely be successful in the future.
OpenText has the capability to really allow companies to take action in order to improve the customer experience.
Businesses today demand a powerful web content management and online marketing platform that can provide the best value at an affordable price with unlimited website possibilities. Kentico, the .NET Enterprise Marketing Solution and web content management platform of choice, powers more than 12,000 websites in over 84 countries, which means you get a stable, well-tested solution. Fully loaded with over 350 web parts and controls and more than 80 extensible modules. Kentico provides you with a fully integrated solution for building your online presence and running successful online marketing campaigns. It allows you to quickly launch an effective B2B or B2C site, intranet, online store, or branded online community, fully integrated with Facebook and Twitter. Test drive Kentico EMS today to get a complete appreciation of all its powerful features and capabilities.
Time now for our In the Spotlight segment here on CMS Connected, and today we will be reviewing the Marqui CMS platform. Established in 2000, Vancouver, British Columbia-based Marqui produces a cloud-based content management system designed for marketing teams. According to Marqui, their CMS provides the most cost-effective integrated software solution for conducting multi-channel communications, including websites, mobile devices, social networks, and email. That is their claim. Joining us to review Marqui in this In the Spotlight segment on CMS Connected is Seth Gottlieb, once again, Chief Marketing Technologist for LineBridge. So Seth, tell us what else we need to know about Marqui.
Sure. So there's a couple interesting things about Marqui, or things that I find interesting. One is that they don't seem to run with the rest of the content management crowd. Like, you don't see them as much at content management conferences, or they're not advertising as much on the content management websites and all that. So they're a little bit of an outlier. They kind of run to their own, march to their own drum. And the second piece is they've position themselves kind of in between two traditionally separate software categories. One is the kind of entry-level web content management, and the other one is marketing automation. And they found kind of a nice little position for themselves because they're, I would say, somewhat unique in the marketplace for kind of what they do.
What features of theirs really stand out to you?
Well, I think the key thing is just the fact that they've been able to span these two categories of marketing automation, so email campaigns and landing pages and things like that, plus basic web content management, so workflow and all that type of thing. And they've done it in such a way that it's a fairly usable solution. So you don't, it's not like where you bought a complex web content management system and then you've got this marketing automation system that you have to integrate with, or you're trying to deal with really second-rate web content management on top of your marketing automation system, which is what a lot of companies do. So they've got a cloud-based or hosted software which does most of what small companies are looking to do, and that's kind of their target market. They're looking at higher education, nonprofits, and also kind of smaller SMB companies with maybe smaller marketing departments, maybe not a lot of IT support, and that's where the SaaS helps them out.
What's lacking? What's missing from them?
You're not going to see some of the more sophisticated web experience management functionality. You're not going to see a lot of like personalization or kind of content targeting or anything like that. It's a pretty basic bare bones web content management system that you're looking at. And also, you're not going to see a lot of sophisticated content modeling, which would allow you to do content reuse, where you have like a content object where you can place in lots of different places. It's kind of like a page-based editing system that works pretty well. It's pretty intuitive, but you're not going to be able to. I wouldn't run really, really large websites on it. I would run lots of smaller websites on it. That would be fine, but not like large websites with a lot of content reuse.
You mentioned industries that they target, higher ed, nonprofit. When you talk about the different types of companies that should give Marqui a close look, you mentioned smaller SMB.
Sure.
But be more specific about that.
Sure. I mean, I think that one of the hallmarks of a higher education company or a nonprofit is they have an audience that they're trying to build and cultivate and increase the engagement with. So if you have, a lot of businesses would fall into that category. But and the nice thing about this product is you can do it fairly efficiently. Of kind of, you got very basic targeted features to drive some traffic to your website, get them to subscribe with a white paper, something like that. Fill in your basic lead generation, then get them to subscribe to the mailing list, and then cultivate that relationship over time. So with Marqui, you could do this with a relatively small team because there's not a lot of complex functionality to be working with. What
do you expect next from them, or what can we expect from Marqui coming down the road?
I would say, I mean, it seems like what they're trying to do is position themselves or become more visible in kind of the general content management industry. Because the longtime industry friends that I have, you talk about Marqui and they say, oh, I think I remember what they do. So I think the next push is to be more visible in that and perhaps position their web content management functionality in a little bit more visible type of way, and then also maybe take a run at some of the entry-level marketing automation software to kind of maybe.
So you started by painting the picture that they don't run with the normal crowd, that they walk to the beat of their own drum. But you do expect them to. So is this like a slow build for them? Is that what you're saying?
I think they're probably looking for. I mean, I don't know what's in their boardroom, but so I think what they're probably doing is they're probably trying to just. get known, because they've got a nice little software application that's available, that's very accessible to lots of different types of companies that have those goals of running a site that generates leads and it builds engagement. And I think they'll take it from there.
All right, that is our In the Spotlight segment as we take a closer look at Marqui CMS. Seth, thanks for your time today.
Sure thing.
Great to have Seth here. If you would like to reach out to Seth, you can find Seth at LineBridge. He is the Chief Marketing Technologist for LineBridge. Outperform competitors globally. Translate content and products there. You can find him on his website. You'll find Seth there. He is passionate about what he does, and we thank him for his contributions to CMS Connected. All right, so that was our In the Spotlight segment. Time now for our rapid fire segment, the always popular, award-winning. We win a lot of awards.
We do win a lot of awards.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire.
I'm
yes.
not, so let's, no, I'm ready for rapid fire. So
Always ready.
Let's get into it. Time for rapid fire now here on CMS Connected, where we put Scott on a 60-second timer as he goes through some of the upcoming industry events, mergers, acquisitions, controversial blog posts, Twitter feeds and feuds and stuff like that. So let's do it. You ready?
Let's do it. Yep.
All right, rapid fire. First one, Demandware Commerce, latest for Demandware customers. eSpirit Incorporated recently announced that FirstSpirit has become the first content management system with a fully certified integration with Demandware Commerce. FirstSpirit is currently the only CMS listed on the Demandware Marketplace, an online resource where Demandware customers can find partner solutions to enhance their e-commerce implementations.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is interesting. First of all, eSpirit is known fairly well for its integration with other platforms. So it has a lot of integrations with portal platforms, other e-commerce platforms, that sort of thing. So they do a lot of that. They're kind of a smaller player in the market, more popular in Europe, but they do a lot of these large integrations. So it makes complete sense for them to come out of the gate here and be the first one in for Demandware. I think the interesting thing about this for me, it's significant because for a long time, kind of e-commerce vendors have been, for lack of a better word, they've been kind of bad about customer experience. Both the experience of the audience, kind of on the end user, on the audience side, as well as the end user side, who's actually working within the system. We all know what content does to kind of enrich an experience, and so I think this kind of focus where you're actually going to really enhance the maturity and capabilities of how to manage the content to support the commerce process is really going to be significant. We'll see more of this sort of thing in the future, I believe.
Our second story in rapid fire has to do with an open source platform called Alfresco, but they're in the news for a couple of reasons, Scott. First of all, they have upgraded their records management module and released the next version of their syncing technology, Alfresco 1 version 4.2, but that news seems to be overshadowed by reports that the company is delaying its much anticipated U.S. initial public offering. What up with the delay in the IPO, Scotty? Huh? What's up?
They're syncing technology, S-Y-N-C, not S-I-N-K. Right, got it. I think Alfresco is. Look, I don't think there's a whole lot about this whole them delaying the IPO thing. Frankly, I think it was silly to announce it as early as they did. I think this is just in general the category. Technology IPOs are not doing extremely well generally, and so they're kind of waiting for more revenue numbers to come in and just waiting for the right time and right place to be able to go push that. I think also you've got to come out with an IPO on better news than this kind of fairly small upgrade that they're talking about here today. So I think there are a number of kind of IPOs in the works that we're going to be hearing about, but I don't think that Alfresco will be the first one out of the gate in that space. There's a lot of who are kind of just sitting on the cusp waiting. So we'll see. I think it'll be interesting, but Alfresco as a platform doing a lot of great things, very innovative. They've pulled out of the web content management space. IPO is not going to be where they're out there in the near term.
For our third story on Rapid Fire, this is an old news and publisher trick. Scare your audience. Oh yes, you think this doesn't affect you, but it might just affect you. It's the news that Oracle has announced the release of a massive security patch for Java that addresses at least 51 identified security vulnerabilities. And if you think this does not affect you, keep in mind that Oracle says 89% That's almost 9 out of 10, by the way, of desktops run Java in one form or another. How does this affect us, Scott?
So, boy, we've talked about Oracle an awful lot on today's show, huh? I mean, and they're getting beat up left, right, and center. So, but I think they're probably happy that security vulnerabilities at healthcare.org are, getting more news than these guys are. I think a lot of these security vulnerabilities, as I understand them, have more to do with devices specifically. So, in desktops and laptops and things, we're not talking about kind of Oracle. When we typically talk about Oracle here, we're talking about their application software, things like the ATG and the other ones that we've mentioned here. So there's not a big issue with security vulnerabilities if you've launched, the FatWire platform. This is more around security holes and patches for devices and things. I don't know. I'm not a security analyst here, but I think just generally, folks like to make a lot of heyday about anything that has to do with security. If I'm an Oracle customer for one of their app servers, I would not be worried.
For our fourth story in Rapid Fire today, Scott, we put you on the clock to talk about one of your colleagues and partners, Tim Walters of Digital Clarity Group, and it's the future of content experience management at Digital Pulse and IMS. Tim Walters and Robert Rose were on stage at our recent event here at the Heinz Auditorium in Boston, and Tim spoke about consumers catching on like the zombies in the Walking Dead TV show. They're faster, they're bigger, stronger, and more insatiable. According to Tim, they've morphed into, quote, voracious, capricious, and insatiable consumers of experience as such. Your comment on Tim's speech about the zombies. And
it was really interesting, actually. Robert and Tim both did a coordinated keynote together, and it was great because you had Tim, who was basically talking about the dawn of the dead and how, the whole zombie theme and how you better get out of the, basically there's no avoiding this. And then you had Robert, who was kind of providing some insight into how you can take steps to start to improve your own customer experience. There was an interesting post by Ron Miller at Fierce Content Management as well, coming out of the conference, where he talked about CXM, which, by the way, we refer to it as CEM at Digital Clarity Group, and about customer experience management and how it is so big and magnanimous and difficult to take on. When you think about it only as a software category, which I don't, then yes, it seems like it's another kind of big ECM, a big, huge implementation of lots of software, lots of expense. When you think of it as, yes, those customers do have more voice and choice than ever before, that's completely undeniable, and that it's about a strategy. I know I'm over time. It's about a strategy to basically be able to speak to that audience, be relevant to that audience, take into account their needs, and turn yourself outside in. Then it's something that you have to do, whether or not it's hard, and not just, by the way, through technology.
All right, for our next story, we have two more, counting this one. We talk about DAM requirements, digital asset management. A decade ago, the industry was vigorously pursuing the holy grail of ECM, the basic premise, one content repository to serve as the home for all content within an organization. We know that this approach doesn't work for web content management systems because they have very specialized requirements and need to evolve quickly to keep up with technology. These characteristics don't apply to most digital asset management needs, yet, Scott, people are still struggling with their digital asset management requirements. Why?
They are because, as we talked about with Seth just a few moments ago, I mean, digital assets and rich media are fast becoming the shortcut to engagement, essentially, right? So video, like we're coming to you now live through, is basically a way to be able to engender your audience, be able to engage with them more thoroughly. And so digital asset management is fast becoming kind of a niche part of the market that is getting a lot of traction. I still don't understand, though, why some of the very large analyst players, even before when we talked about the ECM quadrant, they continue to lump in digital asset management, web content management, all of these under one's umbrella. They're very different things. I mean, the fact that, yes, they have version control and they are pieces of discrete content that can be managed reuse, that sort of thing. Yes, they're similar, but managing huge video files where you need to be able to do overlays and all sorts of things is a far cry from managing web content. And even types of digital assets are very different. So yes, if rich media is a big part of your strategy, you do need to look into systems that will manage those more specifically.
And our final subject story, if you will, for Rapid Fire, we take a recap and a look back at our recently concluded Digital Pulse and IMS event, partnership between Digital Clarity Group, Scott, and the Pulse Network for the show CMS Connected from a Digital Pulse perspective. We're proud of the partnership we have with you. It was a really amazing 2 days. But from a Digital Pulse perspective, what are the highlights that people need to know about in 60 seconds or less?
Yeah, I think we should share this spotlight, to be honest. I mean, I thought it was really good. We had great attendance, great numbers. The people were all really satisfied. I'm really proud of the show that we put on that told this story about kind of customer experience management, from what it was in the beginning to how to tell your story to how to govern your experience to, we had some really great speakers, all, well, there are some of them on the screen now, well-renowned authors and speakers, and they come from big brands. And I thought we put on a really good show for folks. And how about you on the IMS?
I mean, look, the thing that always gets reinforced to me, and it's a series of events that we do together.
Yep.
Our Inbound Marketing Summit is a year-long community. Yep. But the thing that gets reinforced to me at every event, and I think this was our most successful one, I think it definitely was for us as a partnership, is that these are ongoing conversations. You don't come up with answers all the time, and then you raise even more questions. So the conversations need to continue to come up with the solutions. I learned something. I learned so many new things every single time.
The networking was the big part of it. I mean, the folks be able to interact with their peers might be the first time they've seen them since the last event, or maybe the first time they've ever met them. But I think the networking was great. There were just some really good conversations, really good speakers, really good topics.
Nice job today, Leewer.
Thanks, man.
Good to see you again, Scott.
Good, you too. And boy, you're really getting good at my name, Bruce.
Scott Leewer. Thank you for being a part of CMS Connected. A quick reminder that our next show, December 3rd, Adam, correct? That's been confirmed. So December 3rd is our next CMS Connected. We will be talking about marketing automation, and our spotlight feature will be on WordPress. And once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Digital Clarity Group and Falcon Software, the lead sponsors. There's Digital Clarity Group and, of course, Falcon Software. I'd like to thank both of them and thank our guests, Jeff Eaton and Seth Gottlieb, on today's show. For Scott Leewer, I'm Butch Stearns. Get connected, stay connected on CMS Connected. We'll see you next time.